You are 12 years old, and the world already feels like a cage lined with velvet. The year is 1443, and you stand in the echoing great hall of Blethy Castle, a fortress that smells of rosemary and cold stone, while men older than your father once was debate your value like merchants weighing a prize mare. Your name is Margaret Beaufort, daughter of a dead duke and heiress to lands stretching across Somerset, Devon, and Dorset. You understand none of their legal words but recognize the weight of them. Each word spoken by your guardian, William de la Pole, Duke of Suffolk, feels like a door closing on the small, bright spaces of your childhood. The firelight trembles across Suffolk's face as he declares, "The girl brings substantial holdings." His tone is not cruel, it is merely the sound of authority, shaped by centuries of men who never doubted their right to decide the fates of others. Around him, bishops nod, their jeweled fingers glinting. Somewhere in the crowd stands John de la Pole, his son, awkward and pale, barely 14, and destined to be your husband before the month's end. You clutch your cloak tighter, not against the cold, but against the feeling that your own skin no longer belongs to you. Even the air around you has been bought and sold. From the walls, faded tapestries watch silently, hunting scenes of noblemen spearing stags. You stare at them and think how strange it is that even the prey looks noble when woven in silk. You too are prey, a prize to be hunted, captured, and displayed. They say noble birth is a blessing, but you are beginning to learn that for girls, noble blood is the gilded chain that binds tighter than any rope. When Suffolk speaks of our cause, you want to ask what that means. But a 12-year-old girl does not interrupt dukes and bishops, so you remain silent still, small, and listening. You have already learned that silence can sometimes protect more than speech. That night, while the castle hums with preparations for your wedding, you lie awake listening to the murmur of servants and the creak of the wind through arrow slits. You remember your mother's voice, soft, careful, telling you once that a woman's duty is to endure. You wonder if endurance feels like this. The steady ache behind your ribs, the knowledge that your life is already decided by men who will never suffer the consequences of their decisions. The wedding morning arrives wrapped in frost. The chapel's cold breath hangs in the air like a ghost as you kneel on the hard stone floor. You are wrapped in blue silk, heavy as gilt, and your thin shoulders shiver beneath a headdress that pinches your temples. The Latin vows echo through the narrow space. Ego Johannes te in matrimonium accipio. John's voice cracks halfway through, a boy pretending to be a man. You repeat your part, your words steady, because you have been taught that obedience is virtue. That night, when the marriage is consummated, the world becomes smaller still. You are too young to understand what happens, too frightened to cry, and too aware that this is something you must never speak of. The law calls it holy union. History will call it political necessity. But in truth, it is violence wrapped in silk. The days that follow blur together. Meals taken in silence, prayers recited at dawn, and endless lessons in posture, embroidery, and patience. The hall that once echoed with men's voices now hums with the whisper of servants carrying out orders in your name, orders you did not give. Yet even in your smallness, you begin to observe. You learn who speaks with authority and who merely echoes others. You notice the bishop who flatters the duke too much, the servant who listens too closely. You learn that power is never about volume but about precision, about saying one thing while meaning another. By winter's end, you no longer dream of escape. You dream of understanding. You begin to sense that knowledge is the only weapon they cannot take from you. The castle's rhythm becomes the rhythm of your heart, measured, cautious, deliberate. In this world, survival is an art form, and you are already learning its brushstrokes. Months pass. The young boy who is now your husband grows sickly and pale. The adults whisper of fevers and bad omens. You say nothing. You simply sit by the window, your hands folded, your eyes watching the horizon beyond the castle walls, the place where the sun falls each night, and where, perhaps, the rest of your life still waits. When the news comes, John dead of fever at 14, you feel nothing at first. You have learned to hide your feelings so well that even grief cannot find its way out. The Duke of Suffolk informs you coldly, you will remain in this household until other arrangements can be made. Other arrangements. The words taste like iron. You are 13, a widow, and for the first time, a faint spark of something dangerous flickers inside you. Not hope, not yet, but a recognition. If they can trade you like property, then property you shall be. But a property that watches, remembers, and one day chooses her own use. The men see a child in silk. History will one day see something else entirely. The house feels quieter after his death. It is not grief that hangs in the corridors of Bleth Castle, but calculation. The Duke of Suffolk's servants move softly, as if afraid that sound itself might disrupt the delicate negotiations beginning anew. You, Margaret Beaufort, sit in your small chamber, your embroidery frame before you, golden thread glinting against white silk. Your hands are steady, they have been trained to be. When Suffolk himself enters the room to deliver the news, his expression is solemn, but his eyes are bright already, measuring what this new circumstance might yield. Your husband is dead, he says simply. Fever took him in the night. You bow your head. I see, you reply, because that is what is expected. But inside, you see something else entirely. For the first time, you realize that death, too, can be a form of release. You are 13 years old. A widow. A girl with no husband, no father, but lands worth more than most kingdoms. And in this world, that means you are not free. You are valuable. Your mourning period is declared. 40 days of black veils, quiet meals, and carefully measured tears. Not too many, not too few. Each act of grief is watched, reported, evaluated. Suffolk observes you with the same attention a merchant gives a gemstone, searching for cracks, yet you do not break. Each morning you sit before the small window of your chamber, the light spilling across the embroidery in your lap. You listen to the soft scrape of the quill as your tutor copies Latin verses beside you. He thinks you are only half paying attention, but you absorb everything. The Latin words virtus, fides, libertas, virtue, faith, freedom. They hum in your head like a song you will not forget. It is during this time that you begin to study with real hunger. The Duke, imagining it will make you more refined for your next marriage, hires tutors in French and Latin, in estate management and arithmetic. He does not realize that every lesson is a step toward your awakening. You learn how to read contracts and interpret seals, how to trace lines of inheritance and calculate rents. The numbers, neat and unyielding, make sense in a way human cruelty does not. You study quietly, obediently, but something inside you begins to shift. For the first time, you understand the power hidden inside knowledge. One spring afternoon, your mother visits from her own estate. Margaret Beauchamp, graceful and stern, wrapped in mourning black. You walk together in the castle's herb garden, where the air smells of thyme and rain-soaked soil. This is the first time you've been allowed beyond the hall without permission. For a brief moment, you are simply mother and daughter again. Your mother pauses beside a patch of lavender. You must understand, my child, she says softly, that your inheritance is both your blessing and your curse. The lands your father left you will provide for you, but they will also ensure that you are never free. You look at her, the wind lifting a strand of her veil. Then what should I do, mother? Refuse to marry? Her mouth tightens. If you refuse, the crown will sell your wardship to another man. He will take your lands, and you will have no choice. A woman's inheritance exists only so long as she obeys the men who guard it. You lower your gaze, staring at the small violets sprouting through the soil. They are delicate, yet somehow uncrushed by the cold earth pressing down. Then I must learn how to make obedience a weapon, you murmur. Your mother studies you for a long moment, and though she does not smile, her eyes soften. Perhaps you will, she says. That night, you lie awake in your chamber, listening to the rain against the window panes. You think about the herbs in the garden, lavender for faith, rosemary for remembrance, thyme for courage. You whisper their names to yourself like a prayer. The world outside is ruled by men, but within your mind, a small revolution begins. By the time summer arrives, word spreads that your wardship has been granted anew, this time by royal decree. The Duke of Suffolk has sold his right to another, Edmund Tudor, Earl of Richmond. The announcement comes not as a letter but as a summons. You are to travel to Westminster. When the messenger bows before you, reading the parchment sealed with crimson wax, you understand the truth. Your life is no longer your own, but your reaction can be. You nod gracefully, as if this were the natural order of things. Inside, your heart beats not in fear, but in resolve. Before you depart, you return one last time to the herb garden. The scent of thyme still lingers in the air. You kneel, pluck a sprig, and tuck it into your sleeve, a secret reminder that even the smallest plant can grow through stone. The journey to Westminster is long and cold, your carriage wheels rattling through rutted roads and damp forests. You pass villages where children run barefoot, laughing freely, peasants who own nothing, yet seem lighter than any noble child you have known. You envy them for a moment, then remind yourself, freedom without power is only another kind of poverty. When the towers of Westminster finally rise on the horizon, their stone gleaming under a pale sky, you understand that you are approaching not salvation, but the next stage of captivity. Still, as the carriage door opens and the cool air of London touches your face, you whisper again the word that has carried you this far: endure. And perhaps, you think, endurance can become its own form of power. The air in Westminster Palace smells of wax and damp stone. You are 14 now, your mourning veils long discarded, and you stand once again before a circle of men deciding your future. Above them, the vaulted ceiling disappears into shadows. The rushes on the floor rustle beneath heavy boots and perfumed robes. The noise of London, the clatter of hooves, the cries of vendors feels far away, muffled by centuries of ceremony. The man who now holds your fate is Edmund Tudor, Earl of Richmond. He is 24, tall, broad-shouldered, with the calm arrogance of someone born to expect obedience. His lineage, they tell you, traces to kings. His mother was once the Queen of England herself. You have been told this marriage will unite noble houses, bring peace to factions, strengthen royal bloodlines, but you are old enough now to know that words like unity and peace are only disguises for ownership. King Henry VI himself sits at the high table, young and distracted, already showing the signs of a mind that drifts like fog. His gaze slides past you, settling on the documents spread before him. One royal signature, and you are no longer your own. Her lands will support our household, Edmund declares, his voice steady, transactional. They yield enough to fund military obligations and maintain royal standing. He speaks of you, not to you. When the agreement is sealed, you bow, just as you were trained. Yet as you rise, you catch Edmund's eyes. They are sharp, assessing. In that instant, you realize something chilling. This man will not underestimate you, but neither will he pity you. The wedding takes place weeks later, in the chapel at Bleth Castle. The air smells of incense and wet roses. You wear cloth of gold, so heavy that you can scarcely breathe. The bishop's voice drones through the vows, his Latin words floating like dust in sunlight. When Edmund slides the sapphire ring onto your finger, his hand engulfs yours completely. "I take you, Margaret, as my lawful wife," he says. His tone carries neither tenderness nor malice, only certainty. You repeat your vows in a clear, unwavering voice. The moment feels suspended, as though history itself is watching, waiting. That night the castle corridors whisper with the sound of footsteps and closing doors. You are led to your chamber, its walls hung with silk embroidered in scenes of saints and battles. You kneel briefly to pray for courage, for understanding, for anything, and then rise to meet the man who will reshape your life again. The marriage is consummated. The word feels foreign, cold, a ritual spoken more for law than for love. You are 14, and you have learned to dissociate mind floating above the body, as though watching someone else's fate unfold. Later, you lie awake in the dark, the ring heavy on your finger, thinking of the lavender and thyme garden you left behind. You wonder if flowers ever envy the hands that pluck them. Time moves with the still rhythm of a pendulum. At Caldecote Castle in Wales, Edmund's ancestral home, the days follow the pattern of duty. The fortress is built for defense, not comfort. The sea wind moans through the arrow slits, carrying the smell of salt and iron. You rise before dawn, pray, eat in silence, attend to estate matters, and wait. Edmund is often away, raising troops, speaking with the king's allies, calculating which noble houses can be trusted. When he is present, he treats you with formal respect but never forgets his authority. "You must learn to carry yourself as a countess," he tells you once. "Your bearing reflects on my name." You nod, even as you think. "And mine on your fortune." Still, you listen. You study. You watch the way men negotiate power, how every favor demanded a debt, how loyalty was currency more dangerous than gold. You are becoming fluent in a new language, the silent grammar of influence. Months pass. Then, one winter morning, you wake with an unfamiliar heaviness in your body. The midwife smiles knowingly. "It seems, my lady, the Lord has blessed you." Blessed. The word feels almost cruel. You are only 13, barely a woman, and yet within you grows the next generation of Tudor blood. At first, you feel a strange, fragile pride. You are fulfilling your duty, doing what is expected of noble wives. But that feeling quickly turns to dread. Every story you have heard whispers of women dying in childbirth, their bodies too young or too frail. The midwife's calmness cannot hide the flicker of worry in her eyes. Edmund rejoices at the news. "A son," he says confidently, as if willing it to be so. "The future of our house." But before that future can arrive, the wars around you intensify. The country fractures, Lancastrian versus Yorkist, cousin against cousin, each claiming divine right. Edmund rides to war again, leaving you behind with soldiers and servants in a castle surrounded by suspicion. Then, in the chill of autumn, word reaches you. Edmund Tudor has been captured. By November, he is dead fever, they say. Or perhaps neglect. The details do not matter. You sit motionless as the messenger bows and departs. Outside, waves crash against the Welsh cliffs. Inside, the child in your belly moves. You are 13, a widow once more, and this time you carry a legacy that could decide the fate of England. Winter descends. The castle grows colder. The midwives whisper prayers in the dark. On the 28th of January 1457, the labour begins. You are small, too young, and the pain feels endless. Hours stretch into eternity. Sweat and tears blur your vision. The midwives shout orders, but their voices sound distant, as though coming through water, and then crying. A sound that pierces the silence like light through fog, a son. You name him Henry, after the king. His skin is warm against your chest, fragile as parchment, and yet infinitely precious. The midwives whisper blessings. They do not know that the name you chose is also a promise. He will survive. I will see to it. The weeks that follow are a haze of weakness and wonder. You cannot stand for long. Your body feels hollowed by pain. But each time you look at your son, you understand why you have endured. He is your purpose, your protection, your weapon. One night, as the fire dies low, you whisper to the sleeping infant, "They will use you as they used me. But we will learn, you and I. We will learn to turn their game against them." The baby stirs, sighs, and settles again. Outside, beyond the frozen moat, the wars of the roses rage on. Inside, a mother and her newborn lie together, the last fragile thread of a family. The beginning of a dynasty that will one day wear a crown. You close your eyes, the pain still throbbing through your body, and think, so this is what it means to be born into power, to bleed, to lose, and to begin again. The dawn light spills weakly through the windows of Pembroke Castle, painting the walls in hues of faded gold. You are 15 now, no longer the child who whispered her vows in Latin without understanding them. The years between have carved something harder into you, something sharper than innocence. Your son, Henry Tudor, lies sleeping beside you, his breath soft, his future vast and uncertain. The news of Edmund's death has already reached every noble hall in England. The whispers that follow your name are no longer about your beauty or your youth, but about your fortune and your child, the boy who carries both Tudor and Lancaster blood. Men speak of you as if you were a vessel, a conduit for power. You listen from behind veils, behind courtesy, and you learn again that silence is armor. When you finally emerge from mourning, the world greets you not with sympathy, but with scrutiny. You are too young, too wealthy, too unprotected. You know that in such times, a widow's vulnerability is an invitation. Protection must be purchased, and for women like you, protection always means marriage. The offer comes from Sir Henry Stafford, younger son of the Duke of Buckingham. He is nearly 30, older, measured, deliberate. Unlike the others who have spoken for your hand, his words carry neither hunger nor greed. "My lady," he says, "I will honor what you must protect." He does not say love. He does not need to. You understand the language of survival well enough to recognize a proposal built on mutual need, not passion. The wedding takes place in 1458, modest and quiet. No royal decrees, no jeweled processions, only a priest, a handful of witnesses, and the solemn exchange of vows. You are 15, a widow, a mother, and already twice bound by duty. But this time, when Stafford places the ring upon your finger, you sense something unfamiliar: respect. Life with Henry Stafford is unlike anything you have known. He is cautious in ambition, practical in counsel. He allows you to keep your son close, and more importantly, to think. While England splinters into war, Lancastrian against Yorkist, brother against brother, you begin to move quietly within its cracks. In the evenings, As fires burn low, you sit beside your husband and listen to the news brought by riders. Yorkist victories, Lancastrian defeats, the shifting fortunes of men whose names will soon be carved into stone. You study these patterns with fascination. Politics, you realize, is not chaos, it is rhythm, and you are learning its tempo. Your letters become sharper, more strategic. You correspond with families on both sides of the conflict, the Nevilles, the Staffords, even the Woodvilles, names that will one day define the age. You do not pledge loyalty, you offer friendship, favors, advice. You trade in information rather than coin. It is safer and far more valuable. At court, people begin to notice. Lady Margaret has a gift, they whisper. She sees farther than most. You smile politely and deny it, but inside, you know it's true. As the Wars of the Roses intensify, England itself becomes a chessboard of burning fields and broken alliances. You and Stafford live carefully, navigating between danger and discretion. He fights when he must, supports when it is prudent, and withdraws before the tide turns. You learn from him the art of survival through patience, how to lose battles without losing position. Your son, now a child of 6, begins to show signs of the sharpness you've cultivated. He listens as you teach him Latin, the history of his bloodline, the meaning of banners and seals. You must remember who you are, you tell him one night, because others will try to tell you for their own gain. He nods solemnly, already more aware than most grown men. By your late 20s, you have grown into yourself, your beauty subdued by gravitas, your voice calm yet commanding. Even men twice your age defer when you speak. You have learned to play their game, patient, polite, lethal in its precision. But power in England is never stable for long. In 1471, everything fractures again. The Lancastrians fall at Tewkesbury. The cause you once served lies in ruin. Young Prince Edward Henry VI's son is slain. The old king dies mysteriously in the Tower soon after. The red rose of Lancaster wilts, and the white rose of York blooms in its place. For you, the change brings both sorrow and opportunity. Henry Stafford rides into battle for the Yorkists that year, hoping to preserve his estates through loyalty to Edward IV. When he does not return, you receive the news with the same composure you once offered Suffolk years ago. A bowed head, a whispered prayer, a silence heavy with calculation. You weep when alone, but when the servants enter, they find only a woman composed, collected, and already preparing for what comes next. Widowed once more, this time at 28, you stand at a crossroads between ruin and resurrection. But unlike before, you are no longer a pawn to be traded. You are Lady Margaret Beaufort, Countess of Richmond, mother to the last legitimate Lancastrian heir, and you know what must be done. Under the shroud of mourning, you begin to weave again. Letters to noble houses, secret meetings with clerics, subtle promises of allegiance. The war has taken your husband, but it has also cleared the board. The Yorkist crown is strong, but fragile in its legitimacy. You can already see the fracture lines forming. England's fate has always been decided by men wielding swords. But you understand now that power, real power, is the art of pulling strings from behind the curtain. When others sleep, you walk the corridors of your manor, candlelight flickering across your face. In the stillness, you whisper the name that has become your life's purpose. Henry, your son, your legacy, your redemption. The world has forgotten his claim, but you have not. You will raise him not just to survive, but to rule. And for that, you are willing to risk everything. The wars have stolen your childhood, your freedom, your peace. Now, they will forge your crown. The year is 1472, and England is a kingdom pretending at peace. The fields have grown over the bones of the fallen, and the thrones of men are held together by whispers rather than faith. You, Margaret Beaufort, now 29, have outlived 3 husbands, 2 kings, and the last illusions of innocence. The world calls you fortunate, you know better. When Thomas Stanley, Earl of Derby, comes into your life, you recognize in him a reflection of yourself, measured, strategic, and endlessly adaptable. He has survived the shifting tides of English politics not by loyalty, but by foresight. To others, he seems cautious. To you, he seems wise. When he offers marriage, it is not romance he offers, but partnership. The ceremony is brief, almost austere. You wear dark red, not mourning, not celebration, something in between. As Stanley slips the ring onto your finger, you meet his eyes and see the truth of the arrangement. We will protect each other, and together, we will shape the game. Under his name, you move quietly but powerfully. The crown may rest upon Yorkist heads, but you sense the tremors beneath it. King Edward IV grows indulgent, distracted. His brother Richard, Duke of Gloucester, waits like a shadow at his side. And somewhere across the sea, in exile, your son Henry Tudor grows into a man. Each letter from him, written in cautious, precise script, arrives like a heartbeat across the channel. He writes of studying, of praying, of waiting. He signs each one, your loving son, Henry R. The R, a quiet defiance, standing for Rex, King. Even in exile, the dream endures. You answer each letter with the same calm precision. Coded phrases, loyal couriers, phrases only the two of you understand. The garden grows, the fruit ripens, the sun waits to rise. When Edward IV dies suddenly in 1483, the delicate order of the kingdom collapses overnight. His young sons, the princes in the Tower, disappear, and Richard III takes the throne. The court murmurs of betrayal, of blood. You do not rejoice, you only think. The game begins again. In public, you kneel and swear fealty to Richard. In private, you write letters sealed in wax and sent across stormy seas to Brittany. Your message is simple. Come home. The time is near. The years that follow are a blur of shadows and strategy. You forge alliances between enemies, link old houses with new promises, and fund rebellions disguised as pilgrimages. Every coin, every favor, every whisper you trade becomes another stitch in the tapestry of your son's destiny. There are nights when you doubt, when the weight of secrecy feels unbearable, when fear claws at the edges of your composure. But then you remember the chapel at Bleeth, the cold Latin vows, the pain of childbirth at 13. You have lived through worse than fear. And so, on an August morning in 1485, the long arc of your life bends toward destiny. You wake before dawn, kneel before your private altar, and light a single candle. The air is heavy with the scent of beeswax and prayer. Far away, your son leads his army across the fields of Bosworth, his banner bearing the red dragon of Wales. You cannot see the battle, but you can feel it in your bones, the tension, the waiting, the thunder of hooves that seems to echo across the miles. When word finally reaches you, Richard III is dead. Your son is victorious, you do not weep. You bow your head and whisper, "It is done." And in that moment, you are no longer the pawn, nor the widow, nor the ward. You are my lady, the king's mother, the architect of a dynasty. In the years that follow, you move through the royal court, not as a supplicant, but as a force of nature. You advise, petition, command, always softly, always through others. Even the lords who resent your influence dare not oppose you outright. You have mastered the invisible art of control. The power to make men believe your will was their own idea. You establish colleges and schools, endow priories, and fund printing presses. The scholars will call it piety. You know it is legacy. Each foundation bears your mark away to carve permanence from the transience of power. Yet even surrounded by wealth and reverence, solitude clings to you. You have built an empire from patience and intellect, but there are nights when you sit alone in your chambers and think of the girl who once knelt on a frozen chapel floor in a gown too heavy for her shoulders. That girl, you realize, never truly left you. She simply learned to speak in strategy instead of tears. When your son, King Henry VII, visits you after his coronation, he kneels not as monarch to subject, but as son to mother. "You gave me everything," he says quietly. You touch his face, the same way you once did when he was a frail infant wrapped in linen. "No," you whisper, "I gave you what they would have taken." Time, ever faithful to no one, continues its quiet conquest. Your hair turns silver. Your hands, once steady with embroidery, tremble when you lift your rosary. Yet your mind remains clear, sharp as the day you first realized that silence could be power. When death finally comes in 1509, it is gentle. You are 66. Your son has ruled for decades. Your grandson now wears the crown. The world you shaped endures beyond you. They bury you in Westminster Abbey, near kings and poets, beneath a carved effigy that shows you serene and folded in prayer. But no stone can capture what you were. Beneath that calm face lies the story of a woman who turned her suffering into sovereignty, who learned to command in a world that forbade her even a voice. Once, long ago, you were the silent girl of Bleeth Castle, sold, silenced, and forgotten. Now, your blood rules a kingdom. Your name will outlast them all.